that we should be following these principles. And for the next couple of weeks, I will be writing about them in the paper. I'll probably do the first 3, and then we'll do the remaining principles. I can truthfully say that I have lived all of these principles because my mom was actually an English teacher. So all four of her children had to speak very, very well, and we had to write very well. My dad was a logger. Daddy owned trucks, and he and his brothers owned the trucks. He always prided himself with telling us the story of him being the first black man to have a contract with the government during World War II and immediately after World War II. But the beauty of how we grew up is that he was the youngest of 12, and my mother was the middle of 5. So we had somebody in the family who could do anything and everything, including a little moonshining. But we had uncles that worked 2 and 3 jobs, and our mothers were primarily educators. So Kwanzaa is actually a celebration of family, community, and culture. So we should celebrate it the entire year. But during Christmas, between 26th, the week after Christmas, there are 4 to 7 principles that I'm going to talk about. Very, very briefly, Dr. Lee. And the first one is unity. We're all familiar with unity. We're all familiar with our heritage for unity, and we do know that we've sort of gotten away from that unity. But we should embrace the unity as often as we possibly can, even with our children and all of the fancy tools that they have for communication. There is on the internet an awful lot about Kwanzaa. There's an awful lot about history. So let's direct them, let them use the tools, but direct them to the principles of Kwanzaa. And we know what unity is. The second one is self-determination. Self-determination. There is a call to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. That's all I need to say about that. So we can be determined that Black history is taught. We can be determined that we talk about Dr. King at every opportunity. And I always parent. I had a blind auntie that had worked for a wealthy family for many, many years. From 1949 to her death at 93 years old, she was blind. But you would not know it unless I told you, because she hung clothes on the line, she washed, she did everything. She went shopping. I took her shopping twice a year, Easter and Christmas. She was determined to be independent. So that's the second Kwanzaa principle. The third one is collective work and responsibility. We got a little bit away from that, Mr. Jeff A. Cox. Just a little bit. To build and maintain our community together and to make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together. Well, we got a little bit into backbiting. Won't go into that, Dr. Lee, but can we, now that we have had this complete paradigm shift, and when I say paradigm shift, I mean the African-American race is still only 13% of the population. 13% of the population. That's roughly 30 to 35 million people. However, more importantly, since we're now a global community, the United States of America, my brothers and my sisters, is only 5% of the world population. 5%. So that means you got 1 billion people in China and 1 billion people in India and the rest of the world, and we're all connected right now. So we need to be more determined to do our collective work and to be responsible to each other. I mean, it's even in our political world. We can talk about our politicians. We can do whatever we want with our politicians, but it is very important that we support our politicians. What's going to happen when they leave the scene?
Right.
So that's the one thing. That's principle number 3. Principle number 4 is called Ujamaa, collective economics. As a race of people, we're worth $1 trillion. It's time for us to stop saying we don't have enough. We have the money.
We have the money.
We're spending still 95% of our dollars outside of our community.
That's right. That's
The
right.
Jewish people are still spending 95% of their dollars in their community. The Asians are spending 98%. 98% of their dollars in their community. I don't need to tell you what the Mexicans are doing. But principle number 4 is cooperative economics. To build and maintain our stores, shops, and other business, and to support them. The story of a black businessman is not as good as a white businessman is old. It's outdated. It's not true. Bottom line. Our newspapers are just as good as the Dallas Morning News.
Yeah.
The only thing we have to do is spend those dollars in our community. There are, and I know you told me to be short, I'm really rushing here. There are in the Chinese community in Richardson 3 daily papers in Chinese to their people. Think about that. In this country, just up the street, you go to Houston, there is a group of Asian businessmen in Houston that owns a territory, it is a territory, in Houston with their own sign languages and their own restaurants. So they're spending that. There's nothing wrong with you spending your dollars in our, that's the 4th principle. And we're supposed to profit, which means we're supposed to pay the cost. If I go to a department store at North Park, I do not ask them to give me their best price. I do not ask for, let me have this for. You pay the price. So, that's the 4th principle. The 5th principle is purpose. Now, the text tells us this principle calls on us to make our selected vocation the building and development of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. There is one statue of one black man in Dallas, Texas. Now, I think that is an offense to the African American race, and that's the Dr. Martin Luther King statue. That's only one. Why do we only have one? The great people that we are and the great work that our people have done, we don't have a statue. We have lots of buildings, but we are allowing the buildings to be renamed. And I won't go into that. You're educators, you know what I'm talking about. So, the other of maintaining who we are, even with all these cultures coming into our midst, they are supposed to come here. This is God's planet. They will be here because we're still the greatest country in the world, and we're the only people that don't know that. Okay.
Preach.
I'm just going to hurry on. The sixth principle is creativity. This principle teaches us a constant striving to make our community continuously better and more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. When I came to Dallas in 1967, I was one of 3 models that was hired in Dallas. I went to work for a company called Finch, Walkridge & Cunningham. Worked for 3 attorneys. Best place to be in the 60s post-Civil War, civil rights, was in a black law firm. Number one, they made an awful lot of money. I can share this with some of you. Dr. Dorsey in 1969 made $700,000 as a surgeon at Forest Avenue Hospital. I know what I'm talking about. Jasper Backus, who's still living, who is still has his business, is over 40 years old, got a major contract with the Restaurant Association. Where's CW? He got for $1 million.
That's right.
In 1969. Neiman Marcus only hired black models because civil rights had ended, so black people were coming into the stores to shop in the open, in the daylight. Kodak eventually hired me as a model in 1972. Now, the reason I'm bringing up all of this is because between 1967 and 1972, the NAACP did a study of all businesses in South Dallas. 3,000 businesses. in a 4-block area in South Dallas. Today, 2011,
No.
they're not there. Post Tribune is still standing. A couple of places from that era is still standing. And if we're not paying attention to the Trinity River Forest, it's going to completely wipe out South Dallas as we know today.
That's right.
But I'll leave that alone too.
That's right.
I won't tell you. I won't get on my soapbox about that. But that is the sixth purpose: is to continue to be creative, continue to stand up for naming our streets after our black businessmen, after our black educators. With all the educators in this room, pick one, and let's put another street up for another educator. All right. The seventh one is faith. The seventh principle: to believe that with all of our hearts of our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory, the struggle that we have done, believe that we are an excellent people, and believe that we can move ourselves forward, and our children. Now, this room doesn't have anybody in here 20 or 30 years old. That's very important. Are you 20? 29. You just barely made it. But if we stand up the way we did in the 60s, then our heritage will never be lost. I don't think it will ever be lost. But we need to stand up and have that faith that our forefathers had when, after slavery, through civil rights, and to this very, very day. My last and final thing on Kwanzaa is that after slavery, after 1865, between 1865 and 1875, black people out of slavery built 466 colleges across the South primarily. Today, we have less than 100 that are financially sound. Make the contribution, put our money where our mouth is, to the Lee Foundation, put it into our schools around the country, and make sure that our children attend our schools. Thank you.
All right.